Dad handed my brother $94,000 for college and gave me a pamphlet, "Girls Belong at Home." I worked 3 jobs and graduated summa cum laude at 22. I clicked send on an email I'd written 3 years ago. The chief of surgery read it first. Dad's phone lit up at 9:11 p.m. The pamphlet hit the kitchen table at 6:47 on a Tuesday evening, right between my plate of reheated lasagna and a glass of tap water. It was glossy, twofold. Had a picture of a woman in an apron on the front, smiling like she'd just discovered the meaning of life inside a casserole dish. Across the top, in curling script, "A woman's place, rediscovering the home." My father didn't even look at me when he slid it over. He was too busy writing a check. A big one, the kind where you have to spell out the number slowly because the zeros keep going. $94,000. I watched his hand move across the line, the pen steady, the letters deliberate. He tore it from the book with that satisfied little rip and held it out to my brother Garrett, who was leaning against the counter eating a banana like this was nothing. "That'll cover tuition, room and board, books and a meal plan," Dad said. "You focus on your studies, I'll handle everything else." Garrett took the check, folded it once, and tucked it into his back pocket like it was a receipt from a gas station. "Thanks, Dad. That's what fathers do." I stared at the pamphlet, then at the check that had just disappeared into denim, then at my father's face, which was already turning away from me, already moving toward the living room, already done. "What about me?" I said. He stopped in the doorway, didn't turn around fully, just half-turned, the way you do when someone asks a question you've already answered in your head. "Nora, we've been over this." "We haven't been over anything. You just handed Garrett $94,000 and gave me a brochure about staying home." "It's not a brochure, it's perspective. It's a pamphlet about how girls belong at home." Now he turned, fully, arms crossed. That stance he did when he wanted you to understand that the conversation was already over and you just hadn't caught up yet. "Your brother is going to be an engineer. He's going to build things, provide for a family. That takes education. That takes investment." He nodded toward the pamphlet. "You're going to be fine. You'll meet a good man. You'll raise good kids. That's not less. That's just different. Different doesn't come with a $94,000 check." "Because it doesn't need one." Garrett said nothing. He peeled his banana down another inch and looked at the floor. My mother, seated at the far end of the table, moved a green bean from one side of her plate to the other and kept her mouth shut. She'd been keeping it shut for 22 years. Had it down to an art. I picked up the pamphlet, looked at the smiling woman on the front one more time. Then I set it back down, pushed my chair in, and walked to my room. I didn't slam the door, didn't cry, didn't scream into a pillow. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my laptop and typed "financial aid application" into the search bar. Then I typed "work-study programs," then "night shift positions near me." That was August. By September, I had 3 jobs. The first was a front desk position at a Holiday Inn Express off Route 9. Overnight shift, 11 to 7. I'd check in the late arrivals, handle the drunks who couldn't find their rooms, restock the breakfast bar at 5 a.m., and do my organic chemistry homework behind the counter between calls. The manager, a guy named Wendell Brophy, didn't care what I did as long as the phones got answered, and the coffee was hot by 6:15. The second was tutoring at the campus writing center. 12 hours a week, squeezed between classes. I'd help freshmen untangle their thesis statements and fix comma splices while running on 4 hours of sleep and a gas station energy drink that tasted like melted gummy bears. The third was weekend work at a veterinary clinic on Mulberry Street in Crescent. Dr. Tanya Okafor hired me to handle intake paperwork, clean kennels, and assist during minor procedures. I learned to hold a trembling beagle still for a blood draw. I learned to mop floors so clean they squeaked. I learned that if you work hard enough, people stop asking about your story and just start relying on you. Some nights at the Holiday Inn, between 2 and 4 a.m., the lobby would go completely silent. No check-ins, no phone calls, just the hum of the vending machine down the hall and the flicker of the fluorescent light above the front desk. Those were the hours I got the most studying done. I'd spread my textbooks across the counter and work through molecular biology problems until my eyes burned. Wendell once came in early and found me asleep with my cheek pressed against a diagram of a cell membrane. He didn't say anything, he just started the coffee and let me sleep for another 12 minutes. I learned how to eat meals that cost less than $3. Rice and beans from the bulk aisle, peanut butter on stale bread, the free bananas they put out at the hotel breakfast bar that were always a day past their prime. I tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet on my phone. Tuition, books, rent, food, transportation. The numbers were tight every single month. Some months they didn't add up at all, and I'd pick up an extra shift at the clinic or tutor an additional student and will the math into working. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving that year. Told my mother I had a shift. She said she understood. She always understood. Understanding was her specialty. Action was not. Garrett, meanwhile, was at Lehigh. Dad had set him up in a single dorm with a new laptop, a mini fridge, and a meal plan that included the premium dining hall. He joined a fraternity by October, posted photos of tailgates and ski trips and spring break in Panama City. His grades were fine, not great, fine, the kind of grades that say I showed up without saying I tried. I showed up and I tried. Every single day. I showed up to my 8 a.m. anatomy lecture after getting off a night shift at the hotel. I showed up to my organic chemistry lab with coffee stains on my notebook and formulas written on the back of my hand. I showed up to the writing center and smiled at freshmen who didn't know the difference between there, and I helped them anyway because that was the job, and the job was what kept me enrolled. My GPA at the end of freshman year was 3.094. I didn't tell anyone. There was no one to tell. My father hadn't called since October. My mother called every Sunday at 4, and every Sunday at 4 I told her I was fine, and she told me she was proud, and neither of us mentioned the pamphlet or the check or the silence that sat between us like a wall made of something heavier than brick. Sophomore year, I added a research position. Dr. Margot Pelletier, head of the Biomedical Sciences Department, was running a study on tissue regeneration in post-surgical patients. She needed a research assistant who could manage data entry, coordinate with the hospital's IRB, and not collapse under pressure. I applied. She looked at my transcript, looked at my work schedule, and said, "How are you still standing?" "Spite," I said. She hired me on the spot. That was the year I started writing the email. It began as a note to myself, a late-night brain dump after a particularly brutal shift at the hotel, where a guest had screamed at me for 15 minutes because the ice machine on the third floor was broken, and apparently that was a personal failing of mine. I sat behind the desk at 2 a.m. and opened a blank compose window and just started typing. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Not yet. It started with the facts. The date of the pamphlet, the amount of the check, the exact words my father had used. Girls belong at home. I typed them out like evidence, because that's what they were. Then I wrote about the 3 jobs, the night shifts, the energy drinks, the 4-hour sleep cycles, the time I fell asleep in the shower and woke up when the water went cold, the time I got a nosebleed during a chemistry exam from exhaustion, and finished the test with a tissue pressed to my face and still scored a 97. I wrote about Garrett's fraternity dues, about the ski trips, about the check that covered everything while I covered myself, and then I wrote about what I was becoming, not in an emotional way, not in a look-at-me way, in a clinical, factual, here-are-the-numbers way, GPA, research credits, publications pending, clinical hours logged, letters of recommendation requested, medical school prerequisites completed ahead of schedule. I saved the draft, closed the laptop, went back to restocking the breakfast bar. Over the next 2.5 years, I opened that email maybe 200 times. I added to it, edited it, refined it, cut the parts that sounded angry, cut the parts that sounded sad, cut everything that wasn't fact, wasn't evidence, wasn't proof. By the time I was 22, the email was 3 pages long and read like a case file. Junior year, I made the dean's list both semesters. Dr. Pelletier promoted me to lead research assistant and added my name to a paper being submitted to the Journal of Regenerative Medicine. I presented at an undergraduate symposium, and a professor from Johns Hopkins handed me his card afterward and said, "When you're ready for medical school, call me." I put the card in my wallet next to my hotel key card and my vet clinic ID badge. Senior year, I took 21 credits per semester. I dropped the hotel job only because the writing center gave me more hours and Dr. Okafor offered me a raise at the clinic. I was sleeping 5 hours a night now, which felt luxurious. I finished my senior thesis on post-operative recovery protocols 3 weeks early. My advisor, Dr. Cassius Barnwell, read it and sent me a 1-line email. "This is publishable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." No one was telling me otherwise. No one was telling me anything. My father had been silent for 3.5 years. Garrett had graduated the previous spring with a 2.7 and was living in Dad's basement, working part-time at a sporting goods store and talking about figuring things out. Mom still called on Sundays. She'd started saying, "Your father asks about you," around the beginning of my senior year, which was a lie, and we both knew it was a lie, but she needed to say it, and I let her. Graduation was on a Saturday in May. The morning was overcast, the kind of gray sky that couldn't decide whether to rain or not. I ironed my blouse in my studio apartment, ate a piece of toast standing at the counter, and drove myself to campus in the used Civic I'd bought for $2,200 cash the previous fall. The odometer read 187,000 miles. The passenger window didn't roll down. It got me where I needed to go. I walked across the stage at Wexford University's commencement ceremony in a black gown with a gold cord and a Latin honors stole. Summa cum laude, 3.97 cumulative GPA, highest distinction in biomedical sciences. The department chair, a tall woman named Dr. Lucinda Fry, shook my hand and leaned into the microphone and said my name like it mattered. She held the handshake an extra beat, the way people do when they know something about your story that the audience doesn't. No one in my family was in the audience. I had invited my mother. She said she'd try. She didn't come. I found out later that Dad had said he didn't see the point and she hadn't pushed it. Understanding, always understanding. Dr. Pelletier was there, though. She stood up in the third row and clapped with both hands above her head. Dr. Okafor sent flowers to my apartment, a small studio above a laundromat on Birchfield Avenue that I'd been paying for with my own money since sophomore year. The card said, "You did this, all of it, T.O." I pinned the card to my refrigerator and looked at it for a long time. 2 weeks after graduation, I started my first day at Ridgemont Medical Center. Not as a patient, not as a visitor, as a clinical research coordinator in the Department of Surgery, hired directly by the Chief of Surgery herself, Dr. Evelyn Caruso. Dr. Pelletier had made the introduction. My transcript made the case. My interview sealed it. Dr. Caruso was 58, silver-haired, and had the kind of handshake that made you stand up straighter. She'd been Chief of Surgery at Ridgemont for 11 years. She'd published over 90 peer-reviewed papers. She ran her department the way air traffic controllers run a tower. Precise, calm, and with zero tolerance for turbulence. On my first day, she looked at my file, looked at me and said, 3 jobs and a 3.97. Yes, ma'am. You know what that tells me? That I'm stubborn. That you're operational under pressure. That's rare. Don't waste it. I didn't plan to. For 3 months, I threw myself into the work. I coordinated surgical trials. I managed patient data. I liaised between the research team and the operating room staff. I learned the rhythms of a hospital, the quiet mornings, the chaotic afternoons, the eerie calm of a post-op ward at midnight. I earned Dr. Caruso's trust the same way I'd earned Dr. Pelletier's and Dr. Okafor's, by showing up, doing the work, and never making the same mistake twice. And the whole time the email sat in my drafts folder. I opened it one night in late August, sitting in my apartment with a bowl of cereal and the glow of my laptop screen painting the walls blue. A siren wailed somewhere on Birchfield Avenue. The laundromat below me was running its last cycle, the dryer thumping in a rhythm I'd grown used to, like a second heartbeat in the building. I read the email from top to bottom, every fact, every number, every date, the pamphlet, the check, the 3 jobs, the 3.97, the research, the publications, the job at Ridgemont. I read the section about sophomore year, where I'd written about the night I walked home from the hotel at 7 a.m., in January, and the wind chill was -4, and my coat was a hand-me-down from a coworker at the writing center that was 2 sizes too big. I read the part about junior year, about the conference where I presented my research to a room of 40 people, and my hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the sides of the podium. I read about senior year, about the morning I turned in my thesis and sat in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes doing nothing, feeling nothing, because I'd spent so long pushing forward that I didn't know what stillness felt like anymore. It was complete now, not because I'd added some grand final paragraph, not because I'd found the perfect closing line. It was complete because I was complete. The story had an ending, the evidence had a verdict. I scrolled to the top and added a recipient. Not my father, not yet. Dr. Evelyn Caruso, Chief of Surgery, Ridgemont Medical Center. The subject line read, "My path to this position. Context I believe you should have." I wrote a brief cover note at the top. Dr. Caruso, I've never shared this with anyone at Ridgemont. I'm sharing it with you now because I trust your judgment, and because I believe the full picture matters. What you do with this information is entirely up to you. Nora Whitfield. Then I moved my cursor to the send button. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. I thought about all the nights at the Holiday Inn Express, the breakfast bar, the ice machine complaints, the organic chemistry homework at 2 a.m. I thought about Dr. Pelletier saying, "How are you still standing?" and me saying spite like it was a joke when it was the truest thing I'd ever said. I thought about the pamphlet, the smiling woman in the apron, a woman's place. I clicked send. The email left my outbox at 8:48 p.m., and I closed the laptop and washed my cereal bowl and went to bed. Dr. Caruso read it the next morning. I know because she called me into her office at 9:15 a.m. and closed the door behind me, which she never did for routine conversations. She was standing behind her desk, not sitting. The email was open on her screen. She had her reading glasses pushed up onto her forehead and her arms crossed, but not in the way my father crossed his arms. Not the "this conversation is over" way, the "I'm processing something significant" way. "Sit down, Nora." I sat. She was quiet for a moment. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. 3 jobs, she said. Yes. Overnight shifts at a hotel, 11 to 7, while carrying a full course load in biomedical sciences. 21 credits senior year. She took her glasses off her forehead and set them on the desk. And your father gave your brother $94,000. He did, and gave you a pamphlet. About how girls belong at home. Yes. Dr. Caruso sat down slowly. She folded her hands on the desk the way surgeons do. Deliberate, precise, every finger placed with intention. I've been in medicine for 32 years, she said. I've seen a lot of talented people wash out because they didn't have support. I've seen mediocre people glide through because they had every advantage. And I've seen a very small number of people who had nothing, absolutely nothing, and built everything anyway. She paused. You're in that last group. I didn't send this for sympathy. I know you didn't. You sent it because you're precise and you wanted me to have the full data set. I respect that. She leaned back. What do you want to happen now? That's up to you. No, I'm asking you. I thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. I want my father to understand what his decision cost and what it didn't stop. I don't want his money. I don't want his apology. I want him to see the numbers. Dr. Caruso nodded once. Give me his email address. I blinked. Dr. Caruso, I'm not going to yell at the man. I'm not going to lecture him. I'm going to send him a professional correspondence from the chief of surgery at Ridgemont Medical Center, introducing him to a member of my team whose qualifications, achievements, and resilience are, in my professional opinion, exceptional. She paused. I'm going to CC you. You don't have to do that. I know I don't. I also didn't have to read your email at 6 a.m. while drinking my coffee, and yet here we are. Give me the address. I gave her the address. She composed the email that afternoon. I know because I received the CC at 4:22 p.m. It was 4 paragraphs long and written in the exact tone Dr. Caruso used for everything, measured, factual, and devastating without raising her voice. She introduced herself. She described Ridgemont. She described the Department of Surgery and its research program. Then she described me, not with adjectives, with data, GPA, publications, research credits, clinical hours, the position I held, the work I was doing, the trajectory she projected for my career. And then, in the final paragraph, she wrote one line that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I won't quote it exactly because it was hers, not mine, but the essence was this, that in her 32 years of medicine she had rarely encountered someone who had achieved so much with so little support, and that whoever had decided this young woman didn't merit investment had made a miscalculation that the record now spoke against with considerable force. She signed it with her full title, Chief of Surgery, Ridgemont Medical Center, 3 lines of credentials underneath. My father's phone lit up at 9:11 p.m. I know the exact time because Garrett texted me at 9:14, 3 minutes later. The first message he'd sent me in over a year. Dad just read something on his phone and hasn't moved for 2 minutes. What did you do? I didn't respond. At 9:23 my mother called. I let it ring. She called again at 9:31. I let that one ring too. At 9:38 she sent a text. Your father is very upset. Please call us. I read it, set the phone down, picked up a journal article on minimally invasive thoracic procedures and continued reading. At 9:52 my father called. His name on the screen, Dad, looked strange, foreign, like a word in a language I used to speak but had since forgotten. I watched it ring, watched it go to voicemail. He didn't leave one. He called again at 10:07 and again at 10:19. No voicemails, just calls. Just the phone lighting up and going dark, lighting up and going dark, like a heartbeat on a monitor that nobody was watching. At 10:27, my mother sent another text. He read it out loud to me, all of it. Nora, I didn't know about the night shifts. That one stung for a second. A quick, bright flash of something I refused to name. She didn't know about the night shifts. She didn't know because she never asked. Because asking would have required acknowledging that the pamphlet was wrong, that the check was unequal, that the silence was a sentence, and acknowledging those things would have required doing something about them, and doing something was never part of her arrangement. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. At 10:34, Garrett sent another text. Nora, seriously, he's sitting at the kitchen table and he looks like someone died. Mom is crying. What is going on? I typed back one line, ask him about the pamphlet. That was the last message I sent that night. The next morning I arrived at Ridgemont at 7:15. Dr. Caruso was already in her office. She saw me through the glass and gave me a single nod. Not a smile, not a thumbs up, a nod. The kind that says, it's done, we move forward. I move forward. My father sent me an email 3 days later. It was long. It was the most words he'd written to me since I was in high school. He talked about tradition. He talked about his own father. He talked about how he thought he was protecting me. He talked about regret. I read it once. I didn't respond. He sent another one a week after that. Shorter, more direct. He said he wanted to talk. He said he'd been wrong. He said he didn't know how to fix it. I read that one too. I didn't respond to that one either. My mother called on Sunday at 4 as usual. This time I picked up. He's sorry, Nora. Okay. He wants to see you. I know. Will you come home? I thought about the smiling woman on the pamphlet, the apron, the casserole, the script that curled across the top like a promise that was really a cage. No, I said. And then I said something I should have said a long time ago. I am home. She was quiet for a long time after that. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking in the background. The same clock that had been hanging on the wall the night the check was written, and the pamphlet was placed on the table next to my lasagna. I understand, she said. I know you do, Mom. You always understand. I didn't mean it as a compliment, and she knew it. There was nothing else to say after that. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too. Both things were true, and neither one changed anything. I hung up and drove to work. Dr. Caruso had left a new stack of files on my desk. A sticky note on top read, "Review by Thursday. Also, your medical school recommendation letter is drafted. Check your inbox." I sat down, opened my laptop. Saw the letter, 2 pages single-spaced, on Ridgemont letterhead. I printed it, read it, folded it once and tucked it into the top drawer of my desk, next to the business card from the Johns Hopkins professor and the clinic ID badge from Dr. Okafor's office that I'd never thrown away. Then I opened the files and got to work. The $94,000 had bought Garrett a degree, a 2.7 gigapascals, and a part-time job in his father's basement. The pamphlet had bought my father the silence of a daughter who would never ask him for anything again. I hadn't cost him a cent, and he'd lost everything that mattered. The numbers were in, the record was clear, and the chief of surgery had read it first.